You're there.
Dead center.
Oh, yeah.
All right, sitting here with the legendary Ripcordz from Montreal. Celebrating, what, 42, 43 years now? 43 years, yep, 43
Every year it seems to get longer. It just gets longer and longer and longer.
The days add up and the months go by. All right, first, I guess, how's the tour been going? Start there. How's it been?
It's been great. We just we're just kind of doing our new tour, which is like not doing all the dates in a row, but doing 3 or 4 shows here and 3 or 4 shows there. So we've just had a couple to start off this year, and Vancouver, Victoria were great. Lots of fun.
Blast.
Now, if you guys have anything to add, this is your last chance for a while.
Just look cool in the corner.
Yeah, they just. I'm the mouthpiece. They just drink a lot.
Yeah,
That's fair. That's
gotta have
fair.
a look
Him
in the
alcohol, him coffee.
You're the mouth and they're the guts.
Yeah, well, I'm the mouth. They're the looks.
Yeah.
All right, going right back to the pre-Ripcordz Argo era. I had read there was another vocalist that was reminiscent of Robert Plant.
Oh yeah, Louis, my girlfriend's brother.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a keyboardist, which is my girlfriend. Yeah, we kind of like practiced in the basement for a while and played shows with friends, and the way you do when you're starting out. And so we had like a bunch of shows, but basement shows. And then it was like, okay, first club show, and it's like, oh my God, he's Robert Plant. He was like, just like, I mean, I know he was a Led Zeppelin fan, but he was like, he'd just taken all the moves. He was jumping and like aiming into the microphone, and it was kind of, yeah. That was the end of Louis as the vocalist. And then I kind of went, okay, even if my vocals kind of suck, at least I sound kind of punk, and punk is the one place where you're allowed to suck and be a vocalist. So I thought that was perfect.
Johnny Rotten laid the way.
Yeah.
Were there any recordings, any even shitty demos that a friend took on a tape or something of that era?
Of the Louis era? No, thank you. We actually started recording and stuff a little later. What we did is I was actually managing a college station, and we had a 8-track studio, so it was like $8 an hour to record. So we'd go in and record every once in a while. We'd release all these demos, but that was starting in like 83, 84.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then for a while we were recording every single time we went to play a show. We'd record the show, so we'd have like hundreds of tapes of us playing quite terribly the same songs.
Did the music from that era, did that go into Ripcordz Argo, or was that pretty much all scrapped for that album?
Yeah, no, actually we released we finally kind of compiled all the best of the demos into a greatest hits package back in 87, 86. Which still exists. I got it on digital. I listened back to that and I kind of go, well, the songs that were good ended up getting re-recorded for the later albums, all the way up like 3 or 4 albums later. Because we were going to the studio so much, and the way we record is we kind of practice a set and we go in, and it turns out to be like usually, well, back then it was like 25, 30 songs we'd record in a day. It was just like play right through them. And so we keep on bringing back songs, and then we record them, and sometimes things just don't, you think this is an amazing song, and then you record it, and it's like, okay, that's not quite as good as I thought it was going to be. And other songs you kind of think are kind of crappy, or hey, wait a second, that sounds great. So we'd keep on re-recording and re-recording. And so, yeah, some of the songs from the early years ended up as late as like the Ain't No H album, or Canadian as Fuck.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
but there's still a few.
mid-90s.
Yeah, there's still a few songs that are out there. I was actually thinking about putting out a single at some point in time, which is some of the really early recordings, the ones that didn't have really embarrassing lyrics about girls. And,
oh yeah, those are the best ones, though.
Yeah, no,
it's good to see the growth, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at it that way, yeah, I'm kind of like we never said we were like a politically correct band, but kind of like I think from 1988 or so on, I was kind of I think I've been pretty proud of our lyrics and more as we go along. But the early ones, maybe not so much.
That's
You know,
fair.
I was really young. I was evidently really horny.
I don't think you're the only one in that boat. You kind of touched on that. Do you remember the exact moment that you were like, fuck Louis, I'm taking over on the vocals from now on?
Yeah, it was our first show we played as a club called Le Step, which was about the size of a living room, including the bar. And we used to play there. We played there a few times, I guess 4 or 5 times in the early years. And they pretty much let anybody play, which explained how we got in there. Yeah, it was the first time I saw them. And we actually played, the first night we played there, we've been playing for a couple of years, it was the same night the Gruesons played their first show. So it was like 2 Montreal bands that really actually ended up doing stuff later on.
Nice.
Both ended up on Le Step on the same night, starting out.
From that time period, did you have any kind of like friendly rivalries with bands that just broke up or didn't make it, that fell apart in those early days?
I don't know if we had friendly rivalries. We had a lot of, I used to make fun of the Doughboys all the time, just because it was fun to make fun of the Doughboys, because they were, and I actually met John Kastner at some point in time, like on the street, says, "Why are you always making fun of us?" I go, "Look, it's punk rock. I thought we'd make fun of you. You'd make fun of us." But evidently he took it to heart. I was like, "No, it's not that thing. I don't really hate you guys. It's just like, yeah, you guys have had some pretty good success. So it's kind of fun to make fun of you. Make fun of us." But other than that, we were. I think more than anything else, even when we were starting out, the whole idea is that you support everybody else, not that you tear them down. So I don't think we've ever had any friend. We've had a lot of friends, but I don't think we've ever had any of the friendly rivalry.
No, like friends whose band you know was better and you wanted to top or something like that. It's starting off. Not
really. What we were always trying to do in the early years is like think of things that would make the scene stronger. So for a while it was. Like in Montreal, there was this big split between Francophone and Anglophone bands. There'd just be Francophone bands playing one night and just be Anglophone bands playing another night. And so for like the late 80s through the late 90s, when we played Montreal, we would either play with touring bands, obviously whatever language, but if we were playing with local bands, it would only ever be Francophone bands. So the whole idea was bring the two scenes together. There shouldn't be 2 separate scenes in the same city. Yeah. And now there's like 18 different scenes in every city. I was like, I like metalcore and I like this and I like old school. And it's like, no, just like go out to the show, enjoy yourself. So that's what we were trying to do back then.
No, I heard you speaking a bit about that on another podcast, and I was thinking, even like I know cover bands get a lot of shit these days, but I'm like, if you're actually going out and playing an instrument live, I'll tip my hat off to you because it's just a lot of it is clubs, right? Someone puts.
Yeah, I'll make fun of cover bands too, but only because they're making 3 times as much money as we are. So it's like, yeah.
That's the bitch of it.
This guy, like, I teach journalism and at university, and I say, look, to all my students, it's like, either you'll go into journalism or you'll go over to the dark side. You'll work for PR or like be a communications person for a politician or something, and all your old friends in journalism will make fun of you. But you'll be making 3 times as much money as they are. So, there's a compensation going on.
Going back to that first album, I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about building a relationship with OG Records at the time that they started before you put the album out, and your thoughts on when it closed in 1990, and if you have any standout memories of Deja Voodoo.
That's a lot of stuff. That could be like 2 hours in itself.
That's a heavy question.
Well, okay, for one thing, my first show ever that I went to locally was Deja Voodoo's launch for their first single, the Monsters in My Garage single. They got to sign it. So I knew them for a long time. I was putting out what I call my fanzine on steroids at the time, which is Rearguard, which was a tabloid, 36-page tabloid magazine that I put out monthly in Montreal. And so when we would talk about everybody, so if Fugazi was in town, we interviewed them. Ramones, I interviewed the Ramones for that. But it was like whoever, and all the local bands, and whoever had the better photos would be on the cover. So when we interviewed Metallica, they weren't on the cover because we had better shots of a local band. So the local band ended up on the cover with like the full page interview, and Metallica was inside. Yeah, so it's kind of like that was the whole idea of the zine. So I've been talking to Deja Voodoo a lot, and been interviewing them, and okay, another anecdote. Sorry, life is full of anecdotes. First time I interviewed them was actually for the first issue of Rearguard, and they were playing a show upstairs at the university because I was managing the college radio station at the time, and they were playing at a thing we called the Thrash Bash that we used to do on the 7th floor of Concordia University in Montreal. They wanted the bands, so in between bands, they came down to the radio station, and we did an interview. And there's this band called No Policy in Montreal, which is like a really old hardcore band, one of the first in Canada. And the singer from No Policy was passed out on the floor in the sound booth of the radio station, but it was kind of like normal. And so it's like, so Deja Voodoo came in and they sat in the sound booth. They go, "There's a guy passed out here." Oh, it's okay. It's just Ron. Like it happens all the time. Just put your feet on him, and we'll do the interview. So we did the whole interview that we published, and then as we were leaving, Ron turned over, and it turned out and they said, "Holy fuck! There's a pool of blood on the floor," and he'd passed out, but he literally passed out and fall on the floor and split his head open.
Oh god!
And so we were like, so it's this pool of blood, and we're going out. And then we get the security guys, and they come in, and and they're passionate. He says, "Okay, you need to go to the hospital." And I was, no. It's like, am I going to get a scar? And they go, "Yeah, oh fuck, if you don't get stitches, you're going to get a mean scar." And I go, "Cool." And they went right back upstairs. We couldn't do anything. Right back party. He's got this bandage wrapped around his head and blood coming out. And, but then was the days in punk rock. So yeah. So Deja Voodoo, yes, lots of history. We played the Voodoo barbecues in Montreal for years, and met all sorts of bands through them, and ended up meeting a whole bunch of bands like the Stan GT. That first time I saw them was at Deja Voodoo barbecue, and I was like, okay, these guys are from Bainville, Ontario. If you haven't heard of Bainville, that's okay. Nobody has. They practice in their chicken coop, literally on a farm. Must have scared the shit out of the chickens because there's still chickens in there. And it was just like, okay, either we bring them along to all our shows and record them and stuff, or they're just gonna die out in Gainesville. And so that's what we did. But it was part and parcel of the whole Deja Voodoo, bringing a whole bunch of bands under one roof, and we were one of them. We were probably the most punk thing that they did. But it was great because it showed me a lot of stuff to do. And when Og Records folded in 1990, which was terrible, I started up on Guard Records, and so we started doing exactly what they were being doing, and ended up putting out 50 albums over the years. And we were the kind of record company with no bank account. So it's like, okay, we'll just work for you for free, and then you pay for the pressing, and you get 100% of the money. But that was Og's inspiration. And that was a long answer.
That was good.
It was a long question.
Take a sip.
Yeah, okay, now I need a drink.
And that's a good segue, all right? Because after starting On Guard Records in 1990, you put out works by other bands such as The Stand, Sawtooth, and Bare Bones, just to name a few of the early entries that were on there. What was that process like for their release? What was the criteria first for the band to make the label? And how much did you have to do, if anything at all, as far as production of those albums?
The answer to the first question is nothing, and the answer to the second question is pretty much everything.
Okay.
It was kind of like, you're interested, you're a working band, okay, we'll do it. I owned a design company back then. That was what I did. I did design and typesetting, sort of pre-desktop publishing. So I knew how to make album covers, which I did for our first album for Og, and through Og I knew how pressing worked and contacting pressing plants. And I knew that if you're a band and you contact a pressing plant, they'll give you a price. If you're a label and you contact them and say, hey, they'll be 5 or 10 issues a year, they'll give you a price that's 30% lower or 40% lower. So I just said, okay, well, we'll have a record company that has no bank account or anything official. It's got a name though, and I'll contact the people for you. And so basically there was no internet, so it was just all word of mouth back then. So band we played with, we'd let them know that we were doing this, and we started by putting out our own stuff, because we had a compilation for my mega fanzine, the Rearguard. The first one was the On Guard compilation, and they said you need a name for it. You need a label name. Okay, we'll call it On Guard because it's Rearguard. So that was the first release. Second was Ripcordz release, and then it's like, well, now I know how to do this thing. Nobody knows how to make a cover. Nobody knows how pressings work. Nobody knows how mastering works. Nobody knows any of that stuff. So it's just like, I know how it works. For me, it's like, it takes me 15 minutes to explain it. And then for typesetting and for putting an album together, like, I enjoy doing design work. Like me being an artist. So it was kind of fun to do it. So it'd be like, I'd make the album cover, I'd set up all the stuff with the pressing plans, and we'd print the album cover somewhere else. And every time you saw an album cover anywhere in the world, it would always say "Made in Canada" for the album, because they were all made in Montreal at different printing plants, because that's what Montreal did. So we had this, like, okay, we can make cheap album covers. We know where the pressing plants are. We know how mastering works, what you need, put the album cover together. We were on tour, starting the tour at that point in time, so we had like connections. I did a touring guide for all the bands, and then we would start distributing that to other bands as well. So not just bands on the label, but any band who wanted one had to send us $5 and a connection, and then that would get added to the touring list. Kind of what we're doing now with Punk Canada online. It's what we were doing, like literally on typed out sheets of paper back then, mailing it out. Somebody would send me $5 and stick it in an envelope and make some photocopies and send them that. So it was like, there's all the little stuff that, you know, you have to be if you want to be a good band, you have to play good music, you have to practice, you have to go out and want to do shows and be able to do it. And that's, so any band that was doing that could just contact us. So we had Bare Bones, which is kind of an acoustic duo, to Problem Children, to experimental hardcore, to a lot of straight ahead punk rock bands. So just like, you put out that stuff. That's a long answer.
It's a long question, you know, it adds up, it's fair. After putting out the 4 albums of your own on Guard, There Ain't No H in Ripcordz, Dorkface, Kid Noise, Canadian as Fuck, and Shut Up and Pogo, you put out a 96 album, Your Mother Wears Army Boots, but man, she looks cool. And that was through several record labels.
Yeah, well, that was again just like, we did everything like we always did. I'm not sure if even that was on Guard or not, but it was.
No, there were 3 different record labels. I checked on Discogs and it said 3 different record labels.
There was, and that was because we'd been touring, we'd been meeting bands, and again, we were just trying to unite. At that point in time, we'd gone beyond Montreal and beyond Quebec. Okay. We were just always touring either the Maritimes or out west, and so that was our attempt to, like, again, unify. So I think one of them was a label in the Maritimes from Bad Luck 13, which is it's a great band from Moncton we used to play with. Another one was Gott's first label, and the third one I cannot remember. It was a Southern Ontario label, I think. I was just like, they were all people we knew. And then I phoned them up, and this is, again, still pre-internet, and I phoned them up and said, hey, can we put out this album on your label? And they go, oh, well, it's not really a label, or it's like, oh, we can't afford it. I said, no, you don't understand. Like, we'll just put your label name on the album, and we'll do everything.
Oh, so you didn't need anybody's studio space or anything like that?
No, we recorded it all. I did the album covers. We paid for all the pressings. We did everything. And we just put their names on it, and we said, look, if you can take 50 copies, sell them, and we'll just mail them to you, and then you keep like 50, we'll do a 50-50 split on that. And it's not like I'm keeping books or anything, because again, I have no bank account for this label, so it's like, so it's just like, you sell as many as you can, and then send us whatever money you can. And then we'll sell the rest the way we normally do. Most of them get sold off the stage anyway.
Yeah.
So it's more just an idea that by putting those 3 labels on, it gets more attention for the other people on those labels, and then people start learning about what's going on with these other labels. So if they like us, they look up other stuff on that label and they go, oh, okay, there's these other cool bands in the Maritimes, including Bad Luck 13 and their friends that they put out on their label. So that was the whole concept there. It was just like more scene, Canadian scene to find.
Okay, because I noticed after that, there was like one more by On Guard. You returned to On Guard much later, but there's one more by On Guard and a couple that were through other, and then you ran into
Stomp and Mayday.
Mayday's the one I was saying, yeah,
Yeah.
because from 2003 to 2011, you put out the 3 albums through Mayday, right?
Yeah.
What was the deal with getting signed on with Mayday? And how'd that treat you?
Again, the deal with getting signed on by Mayday, as we've known, is basically the Planet Smashers run Stomp Records, and then they had this sub thing that they made, which was Mayday, which is going to be their street punk label.
Oh, okay.
So they put out this compilation called Mayday. We were on that, and I said, hey, well, we got a next album coming out. Do you guys want to do that? I said, sure. Well, how do we... they said, well, how does it work? Well, we'll do everything. We'll give you the stuff, and you can put it out and distribute it into stores for us. And so that's the way that worked. Again, we recorded, I made the album covers, we gave them the entire package, and then they just sort of sent it out and distributed it. And there was no contract signed or anything. I don't think we ever signed a contract with anybody for anything ever. But it was funny because Stomp, and therefore Mayday, was being distributed by WEA Records at the time. So we always used to say at the time, it's like, hey, we're the only unsigned band that's being distributed by WEA Records. So we're in all the stores. It's like kind of cool. That's weird. It was cool.
Did you know, was there like a commercial peak during those times at all for the Ripcordz?
I don't know. I mean, we always sell pretty steadily. And then when we started out, they were saying like we were one of their best sellers at the time, which is kind of cool. But you know, we put out so many albums; it's hard to say when there's more being sold than others. We just always seem to be running out of stuff, which is why we don't have any albums left to sell anymore. So, which is why we started a Bandcamp thing. Actually, is because I'm not big with online stuff, but that's the only place a lot of our albums are available now because they're all sold out. You know, you sell like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 copies or something, and then it's like, okay, there's nothing left.
On that, for the next one, actually, I was curious as far as repressing stuff. A lot of it is On Guard, your own deal, and you've made it seem like, you know, there's a pretty no contract, loose connection with these other record companies, labels. Would you have a problem putting out those old albums, like again on CD or even pressing on vinyl, or what's the block there?
I say if anybody ever wants to put out our stuff on vinyl, give us a call and we'll do it. I'm not proprietary. It would be actually kind of really cool to see some of the albums that we only came out on CD come out on vinyl now. But our choice is, you know, it costs like $7,000 to $8,000 more, probably $10,000 when everything's taken and put out 1,000 vinyls now. So it's like, can we afford that? Well, we can every couple of years from playing a bunch of shows, and then we save up money, we put out a new album. But the choice is, do we put out a new album, and we're always putting out new albums, or do we repress an old one? So we can't afford to do it ourselves. But if anybody wants to do it out there, we're pretty loosey-goosey with the finances, so just let us know. And, yeah, we'd be into it.
Okay, because I was wondering about that for CDs. Like, I know the financial trouble with vinyl is hugely problematic, but it's like CDs cost cents to put out nowadays, you know?
Well, that's why we put out the thing with CDs. Okay, here it is. If you want to put out like a CD with a decent cover on it, which I kind of always want to put the letters and I put lots of photos, the cover will cost 3 times as much as the CD. Like when we did the inserts, when we did the greatest hits vinyl countdown compilation, and we included a bonus CD in it of Christmas songs, like 10 Christmas songs, because we thought that was a weird thing to do, have a bonus CD in a vinyl release. But it's, you know, the vinyl cost us like, you know, 20 grand to put out the double album. the CD insert costs us like $600.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just like, you know, in a little white sleeve, no cover. It's just like sort of bootleg CD inside.
Yeah, just a slip.
Yeah. So it's really cheap, but also nobody really wants CDs anymore. So we could put out the CDs again, but most of the stuff has been out on CD. And if people want digital copies of stuff now, they just download stuff from online. From us, usually for free, because we've never received any payment for anything outside of Bandcamp. So if you've got anything, if you've seen anything on Spotify or anything, it's not us, it's somebody else doing it. We've yet to see anything digitally. It's nice that people listen to our stuff, though.
You know, I remember Chachi on Acid. I don't know if you're familiar with them from back Ontario way. I remember they posted a thing about bootleg T-shirts of theirs that were being sold, and they're like, "We're flattered, but we're not seeing any."
Yeah. Well, there's a ton of Ripcordz merch out there that's not ours. But I always say, like, we often hear like other bands like getting really pissed off about this and like sending stuff, and like we kind of managed to, I think, lose money on everything we sell. So being very clever capitalists, and so to me it's like, I don't care if somebody else wants to put out a T-shirt with a Ripcordz logo and stuff on it. More power to you. The two things we always say is like the only things that will get us pissed off is if A, it's poor quality merchandise, or B, if they're really overpriced. You know,
or if there's an H.
Yeah. There's number 3. Misspelling. It's like, I'm a teacher. But yeah, so it's like, to us, anybody else wants to put out their stuff, cool. Like some guy was like, contacted me a couple of months ago. He was like saying, I want a 3X, you know, or a 4X T-shirt. And we only go up to 2X.
It sounds like Jamie Goof.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who are like, you gotta make these. And we look, we can't afford. Whenever we make them, we can't sell them. Like even right now, we've sold out of a bunch of T-shirts. We still have all the double extra larges that we brought.
Oh yeah.
Because people always say, I want it, and then they never buy it. But some guys like say, look, I tell you what, you want a 3X or a 4X, if you got a place that can make them, I'll send you the designs, and you can
just press it.
You can press it for yourself, and you can press it for your friends, and I don't care. Like, as long as it looks good and it's decent, it's all yours. And he did that, actually. He made a bunch for his friends and stuff.
Cool. It's very cool.
Hey, look, they're wearing our colors. Like, you know, it's almost embarrassing to charge people for it in the first place. So if you want to make it yourself, it's like, go ahead.
All right, now
sorry, anybody wants a T-shirt? Just give me a call. I'll contact me through Facebook. I'll send you the designs, and you can just press away.
Get your own pressing plant going. Aside from plenty of studio releases, you've clocked in many miles over many of hours, touring extensively in this land. I've never made it to the East Coast. I'm from Southern Ontario. I hitched out here many years ago. What would you say are the one biggest difference and the one biggest similarity between the East Coast and the West Coast? I know I'm asking you to be a geography.
It's his first time out west, so I don't know. Have you noticed any differences?
I don't think so, really. No. The scenery, I guess. Gotta be this. Yeah, we'll go with that. The scenery.
Just looking forward to seeing Mount Washington.
I've seen it 5 times already. Yeah. Right beside the Grand Canyon. It's awesome.
I think the fun part about it is when you start doing it on a regular basis, like there are differences. You notice the differences in the punks. Like you can tell a Quebec punk. Like there's a lot of more dreads happening on Quebec punks. There's a lot more crusty stuff going on.
The word tabernacle makes its way out a few times.
And yet out here, like in Vancouver Island and stuff, it's like, okay, it's the vests with all the patches, which don't happen in the rest of Canada. And I remember actually, I was talking to somebody last night. I said, I was like walking down the street in Montreal, and a couple of guys came out of the metro station, and they were like, they had the jean jacket vests with patches all over them. I go, hey, wait a second, are you from like Victoria? And they go, yeah. Hey, are you guys from the Ripcordz? I go, yeah. And it's just like, it's fun and there's more difference in the prairies. There's like a lot more baseball caps and you know, baggies and stuff like that. So it's like you just notice the differences between the punks. You start to be able to tell the difference. Even Calgary and Edmonton, same province, two completely different scenes, but two completely different looks. And it's just kind of fun to watch it. Like, oh, you came down from Edmonton for the show? Yeah, so it's really cool.
I don't know. That's pretty funny. So the people mainly.
Yeah.
So, now, talking about America, you talked playing about Canada. I've heard you speak pretty dismally about the minimal touring the Ripcordz have done in America.
Well, I wouldn't say dismally.
Well, you said you'll never go back.
Well, that's
not good.
See, he was on that tour. It just seemed like a lot of mileage for not much reward. Like, we have a limited amount of time, even more now. Like, we're negotiating times when, you know, everybody's got jobs and lives and kids and girlfriends, and so now we're all negotiating time, so we can only do a certain number of shows, and the stuff we did in the States was like, okay, now we're traveling a lot more kilometers, and we had to cut out Canadian dates in order to have time to play the American dates. And some of them are really great. Like, you know, Kansas City was really cool. We played CBGBs, which is, you know, you write down on your CV and stuff. So, like, there were some really cool shows, but none of them were cooler than the shows we could get in Canada. Well, aside from the CBGBs, but but so it's just kind of like, okay, do we spend that extra huge amount of time and effort and booking and money to go into the States? Or do we stay in Canada and just play Canadian shows and have at least as good shows, probably better shows, anywhere in Canada? Like, we're in Cumberland.
Yeah.
So instead of playing Seattle, we'll play Cumberland, and there'll probably be more people here in Cumberland. You know.
When was the last time you were playing that way?
Playing which way?
America way.
Oh,
Down south.
We only
south of the border.
We only did it the one time, which is 2000.
Oh, okay.
And that was like the wake up call. It's like, okay, it was, you know, you're gradually getting bigger and bigger, and then you're like, okay, well, let's start touring across the states. And we toured across the states, and it was like, yeah, that was okay. There was good shows. There's some not so good shows, but it was like Canada, but not quite as good. So why cut the Canadian shows to play American shows?
That's fair. I guess I was thinking, you know, from Montreal, the border's right there. You could slip down. I would think
you could play Vermont.
I just thought with the currency exchange, if you're not going deep into the south, you would do much better on, because, you know, merch is all a cash business essentially. If you could run across the border and skeeve back to Montreal, I could see how it would add up.
Yeah, sneaking across the border is another thing entirely too, especially when you're trying to bring merch with you. So it's just such a hassle. It's just like, there's so many great places to play in Canada.
Yeah.
And I think if we were a full-time band, none of us had jobs and stuff, maybe we start looking into the States again or Europe. But I think we'd probably look into Europe first, just because it's as close as most of, you know, to get there, plane ride away, like 4 or 5 hours. 6 hours, I guess.
Well, and once you're there, you can go country to country, no
country.
problem. Yeah.
And a lot of bands in Quebec do that. That's more the go-to place.
Scarfold just did that recently.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, the singer was going out with an old friend of mine, so yeah.
I booked them at Punks on Pizza in Peterborough one night, and it was a real dismal show, but they came back to the house after, they partied. The lead singer, I don't know if he was in this story, he hooked up with a chick in the bathroom, and we were like, fuck yeah, these guys are having a time. And they were super heavy. It was very cool.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, fucking A. Now, all right, speaking of, going back a few years to Southern Ontario again, I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about meeting Spider, Punk Fest, and how Spider Fest has evolved.
Okay, Spider Fest is like, Spider Fest was kind of like Spider inviting all the bands he liked to play.
Is that Punk Fest?
Yeah. A Punk Fest. And it was like, so, but a lot of the times Punk Fest was happening in August. And we were always on tour in August. So he'd always invite us down, and he put us on the poster, but we weren't. We were like in BC or something. So when you look at the old posters, it was like, okay, there's like 100 bands on that poster. A third of them didn't know about it or weren't there, and then another third kind of turned up, and then there were like probably another 30 bands who turned up that weren't on the poster. Yeah, so it's kind of like probably something like that. And then I guess we finally got to play in '94 or '95, and we ended up playing a couple because we happened to be in town that year. It was '94 because we didn't go out on tour. And it was, it was great. It's, hey, Spider, and it was just fun. It was like, one of them was really organized. They had these this sort of organization.
One of them.
Yeah. The other one was like Spider, like Punk Fest, which was like, nobody had any idea what was going on. There was a stage there. There was no list of when bands were playing and stuff. So in that one, I actually walked through the crowd. It's like nobody was on stage, nobody was doing anything. So I actually walked through the crowd and found all the bands and like made a schedule and then brought it to the sound guy and then talked to everybody about who brought equipment because most people didn't. And like who's sharing and like organized it all and organized so we were on at 10, which meant we were closer to midnight, but
time.
Not at 4 a.m. So I must admit there was a certain amount of self-interest. Yeah. And then so did that, and then the next morning we're like, okay, it's Sunday morning and there's like we can't hear anything. We go down to the stage, sound guy's there, and he goes, yeah, well, I'm here, and like nobody brought a drum kit and anything, and and there's always people sitting on the grass, like just I'm wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
So we like, okay, well, we'll play another set, and like we loaded all our stuff onto the stage, and we played another set to open Sunday at like noon or something. But like people are like, it's hot. It's like it's like, and there's no shelter, and nobody brought toilet paper or a blow dryer for the Mohawks. So it's just really it's
the only water's in the beer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you could find beer, we gave money to some guy for beer, and then we never saw him again. But anyway, it's like so we load up our stuff on stage, and then like, okay, we started up, and like so people came down, and like it fills up again. And then it's like 1 o'clock, and then, I was like working at like 6 o'clock that night, so I was like, okay, well, we actually gotta go. Nobody had brought anything, so Francois, our drummer at the time, left his drum kit on the stage in the middle of fucking nowhere, Ontario, and we drove home, and then we spent the next month collecting the drum kit.
I read you posted about that recently. Yeah.
So I was like, and I think it was like the last pieces of the drum kit, which I think was the floor tom and like the crash cymbal. It was like someplace on the South Shore Longueuil of Montreal, and we had to pick it up as we were going to a show, or we were playing a show in Sherbrooke, and we're like, get the last bits of the drum kit are in this address, and they're like, again, pre-internet.
They better be there.
Yeah, it's pre-internet, so it's like phoning up people trying to find out where the hell the drum kit was. So that was it was fun, and Spider was great. Spider was like an amazing supporter of the scene. And he used to come to our shows every New Year's Eve show. We had a tradition in Montreal. We'd always play. Spider would always come down in Montreal. He'd come to a lot of our shows in Montreal. Just like a big supporter. And he'd bring like the Spider gang of like 8 or 10 people, all sort of stuck into a Honda Civic or something. Like motoring down.
Well, you had that hearse too, right?
Yeah. That didn't last that long, no. And they'd all pile out, and then. Quite often our shows would sell out pretty early on New Year's Eve. This is New Year's Eve. And then like somebody would come up to me and go, hey, there's this old guy trying to get in downstairs. You go, Spider. You gotta let him in. I'd like go down the way. Come on, let him in. You gotta let him in. It's Spider. Yeah, great times.
And Spiderfest that's been put on since his passing. I know you played that quite a few times. That might have been the first time I saw you actually at Spiderfest. What do you think of that whole scene and how that's grown out of that?
It's nice. It's great. It's not as big as Punk Fest was.
That's what I've heard.
But I think Punk Fest was different because they had like buses organized from Toronto and Montreal that would come down. And it was like a really big thing now.
And they had bands on the bill that weren't there.
Yeah.
That's what Spiderfest needs to do.
Hey, just put the UK subs on.
Yeah.
Like, UK subs even turned up one year. So, I think Anti-Flag turned up one year. And I think whenever a band turns up from like out of town that are on tour, they're like, oh, this is what we came for. Like they don't realize. But I mean, it's really great, and it's a great way for us to meet a lot of friends and stuff, see a lot of friends. And it's really cool. I kind of wish it got bigger quicker, just so that people could really realize what it was like in the past.
Yeah,
It's a great tribute, and we're always trying to play it. We're playing it again this year. But I guess it would be nice if they maybe did the old falsifying of the poster. That might work.
Well, I'll shoot Jay a message.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I was talking to Murray, acting Creighton, obviously, a few months ago about this, and he was saying that back in the day they used to call Punk Fest PCP Fest.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're not a marijuana guy, but I was wondering if PCP and other psychedelics may have worked their way into the diet at some point in time.
Not for us. Boys, any PCP?
Never
Yeah.
psychedelics.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're I could never afford it. Kind of same way I do. Same reason I didn't smoke. Always kind of wanted to, but never could afford it. I was kind of like when I was doing my my record label and the magazine and the typesetting company and going on tour. It was like, okay, that's 120% of my time and 200% of my money. Like, I had my design company and I made sure that I paid everybody really well and that they got way more than minimum wage and they got Christmas bonuses and all that stuff. I think I worked out at the time I was making about $8,000 a year, working like 60 hours a week on that. But it gave me a chance to go out on tour. But as for being able to imbibe or even like eat regularly, it was like difficult. So we left that for other people.
That's fair. That's fair. Now, another festival that I know is close to your heart, one of the Spiderfest patrons had told me, you gotta go and check out Fatal Fest. It's like this, but in the middle of the city. And I was like, okay, we'll see how that works. I hitched out. It was a great time. Saw you there. And Metallion, I believe.
Yep.
That was another one that frequent there. Tell me a bit about watching that begin and watching that go through its shift towards the end.
Well, it's really cool because Fatal, as we always describe it, is like 600 punks living along the railroad tracks with no particular address, no particular electricity or anything.
It's not an incorrect description at all.
But a lot of our friends, like at the time when we started playing Fatal Fest a lot, both my drummer and bass player were living there at the time. We were actually practicing there, and then Jennifer Babette, who puts on Fatal Fest. When our bass player moved out, we ended up practicing in her living room for years, and she's like being a good friend since she started doing stuff. So it's just kind of happy, kind of mixture of things, and a lot of places have had all ages shows and really underground venues in Canada, right? For decades. Montreal never really did until like 10 years ago when Fatal started up and everything. And now it's called Trackside, and it's just like now we're kind of like the mega like underground venue in Canada, and it's really cool because it's in my neighborhood. Don't have to move equipment for a long way. Just go in and play and have fun, and completely illegal and underground venue, and I can't say anything better about the whole concept. And then once a year they had Fatal Fest, and happy to play for free. And there's all these other bands who are all playing for free, and it was being put on by people who are working for free. Nobody pays admission. It's in the freaking parking lot.
Yeah.
And that's why we even recorded our Party in the Park. I wrote the song "Party in the Parking Lot" about Fatal Fest, and it's talking about all the people involved, the bands that played there, at one point in time they put rules out, and it was like the funniest set of rules ever. Like no shitting in the corridors. And,
Oh yes, yeah.
It's like all this stuff. Like
No fucking around on the tracks.
Don't kill yourself. It's like all these like crazy rules that are like kind of seem like common sense until you get to Fatal and you realize why it's not common sense. And so, and actually, I just recorded 2 songs which we've given to Jennifer. She's going to make a video to promote Trackside the club and Fatal Fest if it comes back with our songs, which is going to be cool.
Is that bar still called Death House, or is that Trackside?
That's
you're talking about?
well, for a while there was both Death
Bar.
House, bar.
They sold beer.
Completely illegal. No, don't say that.
Never existed.
They don't do anything like that. It's just people who are. It's like a loft. Well, for a while there was Death House, which we used to play all the time too, and then there was the club called Fatal, which opened up 3 doors along. Doors is hard to explain. You have to be there.
There's like a row at the back of just door, and it's people's lofts. Sometimes it's people just trying to live their life, and you bust in, and they're like, get the fuck out. And the next time it's people jamming, and you go, okay, this is a cool spot.
Yeah, and then it's a club.
Yeah.
And it's all like about from me to you is where the railroad tracks are. It's like the trains are going by
There's a
Toronto,
fence, but it's right there. Yeah.
Except for where there's holes in the fence where people cut across railroad tracks. So so there was Death House, and then a couple of doors along there was a place called Fatal at Fatal, and then that changed into now it's Trackside. And they actually sort of basically bust open a doorway between 2 of these again lofts. They're basically where people used to unload equipment from trains, like unload stuff.
Well, it was a factory that was converted into lofts, right?
Yeah. But that was like the reason they're along. It was like a siding there, and the trains would stop and they'd unload into all these cinder block buildings along the way, and that's where all the stuff for the factory would be. So now they just like, it's no longer places where we keep stuff, it's where we keep people. With no back door, as talk about fire hazard. But they actually sort of broke open a doorway between 2 of them, so now the 2 of these lofts are now Trackside. So you go in one place, and there's a place where you can sit down with your friends and bring your own beer, and somebody built a balcony. Actually, our ex-bass player, Maddie, actually built the balcony upstairs, because other than that, it's just like this huge kind of warehousey space. And he built a thing, and then they, again, busted open a door into the next place, and so now there's a balcony, and there's a stage, which is amazing, because there didn't used to be a stage, and there's a sound booth, and there's lighting, and there's...
Oh, wow.
Now they just put in air conditioning.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
But let's face it, there's there's people smoking cigarettes and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a loft. I keep on doing that, but I don't have any other way to do it. So there are no rules. And the cops know it exists, but they don't rate it ever, because I think they're just happy that every troublemaker in the city is in one place at the same time. And so they don't have to worry about the rest of the city. So
Sounds like East Aces.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I remember Fatal the second time I was there, somebody got dragged out, and you could tell this person was blue, and they weren't in good shape. And they got taken out to the side of the street, plopped down. I saw the ambulance come up, the paramedic came up and just touched him and looked up and started taking notes on a notepad. And I was like, oh, that's heavy shit. And you know people are up to stuff, right? But then they had the mobile clean shootout. I don't know what it's actually called, but they had a van come in that had, nurses administering drugs and all that. And I remember being super thrown back by how long the lineup was to actually get into that van. And I was like, whoa, it's this prevalent. And you do hear that about Montreal often.
What they did is that at Fatal, they even had like people come in to give seminars on naloxone and like how to treat ODs and stuff, and they were packed, and but it was kind of like Trackside version of like, okay, people come in and they're drinking beer and they're like talking, it's just, but But yeah, I mean, the nice thing about Fatale is there's all these people, and they do run into trouble every once in a while, as any community does. But they're a community, and they try and take care of each other.
Yeah.
And even more now that there's contact, there's websites where that community talks to itself as well as in person, obviously, because you're always out in the parking lot, and people are talking to each other, and you know when there's a problem, you know when somebody has a problem. So to me, it's just like it's a great example of problems developed, and and you do have trouble for a while, and then people figure out how to sort of deal with that and make things better again. And that's what Fatale's always been like. It's like, okay, we're running into a problem. Okay, now it's okay. And for like the last 10 years, every 3 months you hear that Fatale is going to shut down, there's the cops going to shut down, there's this, that, and the other thing. And then the Fatale community discovers the problem themselves, deals with the problem themselves, and then everything's okay.
Well, I had heard a bit about that. It's an uncomfortable topic, but I had heard a bit about that with John Fatale. Was that his name?
Yeah.
Because that's why Jen Bobette basically took over, right? He got ousted because...
Yeah, because he was being a total fucking scumbag, yeah.
That's what I had heard, yeah. Because then it was closed for a couple of years, right?
Well, no, it never actually closed. That's when it changed over to trackside.
Okay.
So people lost track of it because they were looking for Fatale and it was no longer there. But it was trackside. But yeah, like it was basically the women of Fatale took over and basically got him booted out. And then he disappeared into like nowhere land.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. It doesn't show up around there anymore at all, I've heard.
Oh yeah, like he literally, when he moved out of town, I think he moved to like the Yukon or something. Like he was like, okay, he knows he was persona non grata. And that's what I say. It's like, okay, people discover a problem, they deal with the problem, they move on.
Yeah.
That was one of those big things, and that's why it's trackside now instead of Fatale.
And I always found Spiderfest, same thing. As soon as anything starts, everybody's buddies grab them, they separate them, and it's calmed down before anything.
There's going to be, whether you're in the punk scene or anywhere else in the world, there's going to be people who try to take advantage.
More football games.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever there's some sort of community, there will always be people who try and take advantage of other people, and it's how you deal with that. Like you can't avoid that. There's going to be assholes everywhere, and it's how you deal with the assholes.
Most definitely, couldn't agree more. We're gonna get a little name droppy here now, all right? I didn't know this until I'd actually looked into this morning. I knew about the Canadian as Fuck, Ripcordz as Fuck tribute album.
Oh yeah.
And I knew Rancid had always spoken kindly of you, but then I looked into the other list. I saw Nirvana was on there. I also heard that you don't remember that show, so we're not going to dig into that too deep. But I thought...
It was the 90s. Nobody remembers anything.
Out of all the names on there, probably the most underwhelming of the bunch that I'm most interested in is Lydia Lunch. You played with Lydia Lunch?
Yeah.
When and where and how did that go down?
That was like probably 1990, 91.
Okay. Was she with Roland S. Howard at the time, do you know?
No friggin' idea.
Oh, man. I'd love to.
I just remember, like, meeting her, and she was kind of nice, but not crazy remarkable. Like, I don't know, I was expecting something weird. And she was just, like, down to earth, like, just like, person on tour, sort of. And we opened for her because we opened for everybody. Like, we played a club in Montreal called Fufu and Electric. We basically would play for $50 to open for anybody. In fact, we played so often, people were going, we'd be on the street handing out flyers and stuff. People go, "Oh, you guys again?" I go, yeah, okay. I guess it's the third time this month. We should probably cut back on that. But it was fun playing with her. But it wasn't as remarkable as I was expecting it to be. It was just nice to play a weird show. And back then we were playing so many shows that we actually came up with a second name, The Disbanded, that we would play as The Disbanded when we were playing too many shows. So I think the Lydia Lunch show was one of them where
we
were The Disbanded. And then we'd go up on stage and we'd say, "Hey, we're The Disbanded, we're Ripcordz cover band."
You got the look down perfect.
The sound.
Yeah, those guys suck.
Now, you know the old saying, don't meet your idols. I was wondering if you had an interaction with somebody you looked up to musically where they turned out to just be a total dick. And you guys can add in on that.
The Damned.
Oh, really?
Always the
that
Damned.
breaks my heart to hear.
Biggest
But
fucking
explain.
assholes in the universe.
Really?
Um,
Captain Sensible seems like the coolest guy on the planet.
yeah, actually, he wasn't in the band at the time. This was in the 90s.
Okay.
So after he left the band in the 90s, yeah, Dave Vinian, biggest fucking asshole I've ever met.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a green room. We don't hang out in green rooms, but usually they put the beer there.
Yeah.
He was like, nobody else is allowed in the green room. It's only ours. And then there were all sorts of little things all through the night. And then at the end, we were like, we didn't have a lot of equipment, so we like drove our band to like back door to just load up. It was going to take us like 10 minutes, probably 5. And like they were like, you got to move out. We want to move. And we go, look, we're just like, it'll be 5 minutes. And our drummer, Francois, who's like, you know, vegan guy, nice guy, we had to actually stop him from getting into a fight with the band. They were such assholes.
Why would you stop that?
Yeah. Well, we needed a drummer. We didn't care about the band. But
Any
yeah.
press is good press. Frank's that.
But pretty much every band played with anywhere from Misfits, Government Issue, Dead Milkmen, whatever. Always been great. Like when I met the Ramones, not to play with, but to interview, great guys. Rancid, played with a bunch of shows. Always a great experience. Strung Out, and Diesel Boy, whatever. All the bands. If you meet a punk band, they're gonna be nice people. That's what punk is. Except for the Damned, they're fucking assholes. They're fucking assholes.
No, that's crazy to hear.
Yeah, and I was looking forward to them. You know, Vice Squad, played with them. Really nice people, like exhausted because they got in at 2 a.m. and they were like great people. Peter and the Test Tube Babies, great people. Damned, fucking assholes.
On the top of assholes, being, you know, such Montreal homebound folk, I was curious if you were around in the '88 Art Shock Festival in Montreal where G.G. Allen played his only Canadian date.
No, yet. I do have an anecdote because that's what I did. We actually interviewed him for Rearguard for the magazine.
Okay.
That I put out. It wasn't me, it was my roommate, Warren, Mr.
Was this the 16-year-old kid that was fucking up the Metallica
No, that was
interview?
he didn't fuck it up. He got it on toilet paper. But anyway, but no, this is my roommate, Warren, Mr. Wonderful Campbell, who went and interviewed him. And he was like, yeah, said, well, actually, Gigi's kind of like down to earth kind of guy. And he was like, basically said like, he brought like, in his suitcase, he had like this jock strap full of X-Lax so he could shit on stage.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, customs just let me right in. Like, I was like, fuck, what the hell? And the guy's like just astounded. And then I actually went to see the show, and it was the only show I'd seen where everybody was trying to be in the back because nobody wanted to be in the front where he would like throw shit at you. And then we played like 6 or 7 days later, we played Fun, which is where he was playing. And it was like, and you're like, okay, yeah, well, we disinfected everything. But you're at the microphone, and all you can smell is like G.G. Allen shit on the microphone. And that was when I decided I think I need to get a microphone. And so I had a microphone for years after that. That would bring with me. It was like, I don't want it. So, and it was the one time the microphone is here and you're like singing like this and hoping it was picking you up because you just don't want to get it anywhere close to it.
That's hilarious.
So that was our G.G. Allen experience.
Yeah, I always gotta ask because there's really nothing else like it, and I don't think there was any other Canadian date other than that Montreal Shock Festival, which I've never even heard of before that.
Oh no, they
after.
made it for him. Like it was like, okay, he's gonna be here. Okay, now we'll like get some local bands that are like crazy and some other band that we can get in from out of town, and it was just like, look at that. It was built around Gigi.
See, I didn't know that. Okay, now this is what I generally end the podcast interviews on. Again, you two are more than welcome to chime in. I'm sure you've seen your fair share of shit, quite literally, in touring. What are some of the worst venue bathroom experiences that you've had on tour?
Having no bathroom. I'll go with that. Having no bathroom. Yeah.
There's a lot of bad ones out there.
I just remember the CBGB was
Oh, CBGB.
it's just like a hole.
Yeah.
Let me see. It's like, well, okay, I guess you don't need to go to the bathroom. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. The worst. I got maybe two answers for this one. The worst bathroom experience was 1992 when we played the Highwood Music Festival in Calgary. Well, actually north of Calgary. Well, like just south of Calgary. And it was like they were expecting, I don't know what, like 5,000 people, and they got like 25,000. And they had all these porta potties, but there was way too many people. And so you finally get to the porta potty and you open it up, and literally the porta potty is here, and the shit is piled like at least 8 inches, a foot above the toilet. And you kind of, at that point in time, you kind of look at it and kind of go, okay, I think we're the only band that ever went to the West Edmonton Mall to find a bathroom. Because you're just like, okay, we're going to travel like 300 kilometers just to get to a fucking bathroom. Because we know that the West Edmonton Mall is a mall, they have bathrooms. So we actually left the venue and like went to the West Edmonton Mall. So it's just like too totally fucking gross. So that was my worst bathroom. The other one is, of course, the legendary Royal Albert Hotel in Winnipeg, which has 1,000,001 stories about it. Like when we went into a room, we have like a 5-star rating system for hotels, which are all based on the Royal Albert. But I think the 2-star is when you walk into the room and there is no pile of human shit in the corner when you have to go to bed. And that was number 2, because number 1 is nobody's being decapitated in your room in the last 2 weeks, which also happened to us. When we went to the
In
Royal
Winnipeg?
Albert. Yeah, Winnipeg.
Murder capital of Canada,
Yeah.
standing strong.
Yeah, and it's the Royal Albert that won them the title year after year.
You know what? I guess outside of that, just for fun, do you have any memories of Peterborough, Ontario? Anything that stands out? It's kind of a nowhere place. It's where I'm from. I'm just curious.
Peterborough. Like, I think we played it once. There was like a marijuana cafe that was there that we played once, which was weird enough in itself. We were trying to eat burgers, but they were full of hemp. It was odd.
Basically vegan at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well, whatever. We don't have to move. This is good. But yeah, you know what? Other than that, the one show I can remember there was like, it was actually a really good show. It was like, it was at that cafe, and it was packed, and it was fun. I wish we could play there again, actually. Hey, Peterborough.
Well,
Give us a call.
Before COVID, we were talking. I was gonna book you guys for Punks on Pizza, and then COVID hit, and I was just so pissed because I had 1 million Ticketmaster refunds, and then I was like, "Yeah, I guess COVID killed it." And you're like, "I guess so," and that was the end of that conversation. But I remember being super upset about that wave of cancellations.
Oh yeah, we.
As I'm sure you were too.
We cleverly released our album in early May, a month after COVID hit. Because it takes forever for vinyl to get pressed, and then okay, COVID, okay, our album's finally ready. Which was really funny was they shut down everything except for priority industries, and evidently pressing a Ripcordz album was a priority during COVID, so we got it, but we couldn't do anything with it except pile it up in my living room. So yeah,
is that the vinyl countdown one, or is that the buy this album, not the first?
Yeah, buy this album, Jerkwad. Don't buy the first album, Jerkwad. Get this one. Yeah, which is why I tell everybody at the T-shirt table, except for the Jerkwad part. I'll leave that out. Don't buy the first album. Get this one. We've been practicing. Come on, we're better now.
Get this one, you very fine gentleman.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for doing this interview.
Hey, it was fun.
I wish I had more questions about you guys. It was not in the Residox.
Oh, it's fun. Thank you for doing it.
No problem. Thank you.